June 11th, we saw 57 people killed. On June 17th, 59 people killed. On June the 29th, around 50
allegedly, according to Hamas
killed.
numbers.
On June 29th, 31 Palestinians were killed.
Yes, all of those are allegedly, according to Hamas numbers.
Mr. Jonathan Conticus, who was a spokesman right at the outbreak of October 7, 2023, former Israeli soldier, well decorated, and now he's a spokesman to help us appreciate and understand the war and the intricacies of the war, the details of it. Listen to this conversation with Mr. Conticus, and I think you'll appreciate his perspective, because his eyes are laser sharp on the truth. And there are so many different presentations, so many different interviews, so many different accusations. But Mr. Conticus is able to bring truth to the table. Listen to this amazing interview. Please kindly subscribe to the channel so we can continue on spreading a little bit of light to push away a lot of darkness.
Conticus is a former spokesperson for the IDF, now a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much, Mr. Conticus, for joining us here on the program. I just want to first get your reaction to our report there.
Yes, it's an interesting, thank you and good evening for having me on. It's been a while since I was last on Sky UK. I think it's an interesting report, and I think it reflects, one part of how ugly, difficult, and horrible fighting in densely populated urban terrain is. And I think that what this young man, who I saw the last part of the episode of the interview, he looks like a more or less genuine man. I don't think he's motivated by anything sinister, but I think he's reflecting on how difficult it is to fight in such an area and what the challenges are on the battlefield. And beyond what the IDF's response, which you dutifully and professionally put in full length, and that's good, I'd say the following for people at home to be able to understand the complexity. When was the last time that anyone saw a Hamas operative, that we would refer to as terrorist, fighting in uniform? I don't recall Hamas fighting in uniform for the last year and a half. The only time that they've been in uniform is when they have been handing over hostages or in parades. And I think that's very important for people to understand that, unfortunately, there's no boundary, there's no distinction between civilian and military.
Are you comparing the actions of the IDF to what Hamas is doing and what Hamas has done? Because, if we talk about the IDF talks about being, one of the most moral armies on the planet, a responsible army. What we're seeing now, not just citing our report here, but Haaretz, one of the flagship newspapers in Israel, Israeli investigative reporters, talking about this being a widespread issue. It's not just about our report. We're now hearing more and more soldiers coming out and saying this. Are we seeing a breakdown in the chain of command of the IDF?
No, far from it. And I think you're citing two sources that are, the Haaretz report was widely condemned, and many times I've had credit for and respect of Haaretz, but I think this report was very, very politically motivated and founded again on anonymous sources that were not speaking up and were not providing any claims. And since the claims are interesting and they fall into the narrative that is very popular here on Sky and many other outlets, which seeks to put blame and responsibility on Israel, it is widely amplified. I think that it is far from truth.
I mean, if I can just...
I'll just continue.
Because I just want to point out...
I would just like to continue and the answer, because at the bottom line, we are fighting in an environment which is tactically almost impossible to maintain clear lines and distinction.
What we're talking about here, Mr. Conticus, is not a combat zone. We're talking about people coming, civilians coming to seek aid.
No,
and
we are talking about a combat zone. We are indeed talking about the combat zone.
Let's talk about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, where the IDF comes to mans and controls the area where civilians come to get food. On June 11th, we saw 57 people killed. On June 17th, 59 people killed. On June the 29th, around 50
allegedly, according to Hamas
killed.
numbers.
On June 29th, 31 Palestinians were killed.
Yes, all of those are allegedly, according to Hamas numbers.
To get food. So, Mr. Conticus, I mean, the fact is that whether or not you condemn our report or Haaretz's report, the point is that should the IDF not be taking responsibility for the actions of its soldiers?
No, I think you're very, very mistaken. And all of the numbers that you said, I think you should professionally say that this is allegedly and according to Hamas sources. And let's be clear who we're citing and referencing. I know that it's very tempting to use Hamas numbers as if they are true, but this is a terrorist organization that abducts civilians, murders people, and then lies about it in the media. And you're sitting there. And you're sitting there and saying as if those are true numbers.
It's not just
caution.
Me. These are Israeli investigative journalists who are saying it. It's a flagship Israeli newspaper that's talking about it. We've seen the IDF soldier in our report saying it. So you can sit there and condemn the soldier. You can condemn the Haaretz report, and you can say that these numbers of people who are dead may not be true. But do you not believe that the IDF should take responsibility for all of this?
I'll tell you what I believe. I'll tell you that I believe that the Israeli forces are fighting in a densely populated urban area where the enemy, Hamas, is using civilians as human shields, masquerades as civilians on the battlefield, and you are terribly mistaken. Hold on. You made quite a long monologue, and I would be really grateful if I could kind of get in a half an answer here. And I will address it.
You're deflecting on what Hamas is doing.
No, I'm trying to answer your allegations, which are masquerading as a question, and I'm trying to answer the question by being factual. What I think is clear to anybody who is looking at the situation from an objective point of view, Hamas uses civilians, hides among civilians, and doesn't distinguish between itself and the civilian population. We've seen this before the war and throughout the war. That needs to be the foundation of understanding.
To get food.
But that needs to be the foundation of the understanding before we get into what's happening on the ground. And anything is a battlefield in Gaza.
When I read you these numbers, do you accept that civilians, dozens and dozens of civilians have been killed trying to get aid?
I know that there have been instances, yes, where there's been shots fired and there have been violence at the distribution sites. I fear that, the organization that stands to gain from it, it's not the IDF and it's not Israel. The organization that is trying to dismantle the independent provision of aid to Gazans is Hamas. And they are the ones who have been instigating events on the ground. So I think that is very important context for viewers to be able to know. I always ask myself, who stands to gain from a certain situation? From the disruption of humanitarian aid.
We've got about a minute or so left, but can I ask you, do you believe that soldiers within the IDF who have committed these crimes, and we've seen the likes of Ehud Olmert say that war crimes are being committed, a former Prime Minister of Israel, do you believe that these soldiers should be prosecuted?
Most definitely, whenever an Israeli, and that, by the way, has already happened. We've had Israeli soldiers that have been reprimanded. We have them relieved from duty, even officers. Whenever there has been wrongdoing, and that unfortunately is part of war everywhere, British troops, American troops, whenever you fight, sometimes people make mistakes and sometimes there's wrong judgment, and then there's investigations, and then people face consequences, and that has already happened.
Should the IDF be accountable? And was there a breakdown in the chain of command here?
No, far from it. As much as you would want that to be the picture, I hate to disappoint you. That is not the situation. And one or two reports or anonymous stories do not paint a full picture. The picture is Hamas using civilians as their human shields, Hamas abusing the civilian population, and Israel being forced to fight in an environment where it's almost impossible to distinguish between who is a combatant and who isn't. Israel tries to do that. I think Israel goes to tremendous lengths in order to minimize that. And again, when was the last time that you reported of a Hamas combatant firing weapons in uniform? When did you last see a Hamas
I'm not sure
video?
the point you're making. What we're seeing here is IDF soldiers coming out in reports by Israeli reporters, by our journalists on the ground in Israel, saying that these crimes are being committed. We're showing you the numbers of civilians being killed, trying to simply get aid and food, whether they arrive early, whether they arrive late, whether they arrive on time.
Provided.
We see the death toll continue to rise.
I think you're cherry-picking information.
On the ground in Gaza.
I think you're very much cherry-picking information because you failed to mention that more than 50 million meals have been provided over the last 4 weeks.
Well, you know,
and those are the same Palestinians who you claim are crowding to get food.
Widely
I think that's important information for your viewers to be aware of, and the fact that you're not reporting it is not really good, not part of the story.
We've been reporting about the blockade, the aid blockade that lasted
but have you reported
for about
40 million
days.
Meals that have been provided?
And we've been reporting about the number of people killed trying to get aid when the UN and various other charities and aid organizations haven't been able to get their trucks in, haven't been able to get their supplies in. And you've put in place this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is, you know, shrouded in controversy in the way that they've handled the aid.
Which is providing food to the people who need it, directly to those who need it, not to Hamas, not to corrupt UN organizations, but it is providing it directly to the people who need it. And of course you are upset, and of course UNRWA is upset, and of course many people are upset because this is undermining the control of Hamas over the Gaza Strip. And I understand that there are vested interests, UN and global interest, in keeping the status quo as it is, and what Israel is doing is providing food and is providing humanitarian aid directly to the people who need it. And I think people at home in the UK should understand that more than 40 million meals have been provided in 4 weeks. That's not nothing. That's a lot of food and a lot of honest aid that has been provided.
I think that the statistics and the aid agencies around the world speak for themselves when they talk about the issues that the people of Gaza face. Mr. Conticus, thank you very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
How we can see how one-sided they are, keep on repeating the same rhetoric. How dare you criticize soldiers who are in a hot war zone? How dare you criticize what's going on in Gaza from the comfort of your home? Are you there sacrificing yourself? You're just there quoting lies, and more lies, unsubstantiated claims that feeds the Hamas PR campaign. Really, do they have any idea what's going on day to day in Gaza? How the Israeli soldiers are sacrificing their lives and bringing in millions of food and meals to help those that are in need? And there is no famine going on in Gaza. That's a myth. Look at all the pictures. You'll see people are not famished there. Yes, there is some hunger here and there, but there isn't a global hunger going on over there. There is tons of food coming as long as Hamas does not hijack the food for their own needs. As we know very clearly how they hijack the food and then they resell it to the people who the food was originally intended for. It's what's going on there is so disastrous, so inhumane, and yet they're pointing the fingers on the Israeli soldiers who are sacrificing everything they have to try to bring peace to the area, and yet criticizing them based on baseless reports that are totally unsubstantiated. So I think Mr. Jonathan has done a great job trying to explain. But when people become myopic, when people become narrow-minded, and they just go into a rinse and repeat the same words and not willing to open up their eyes, not willing to even entertain for a second that the sources of the information are faulty, The sources of the information are unsubstantiated, and why cherry pick an event versus looking at the greater picture of what Israel has been through since October 7? Have we not forgotten who started this war? Did Israel start this war? No. This was Hamas on October 7, 2023. They chose with 3,000 terrorists to breach the border and to murder, mutilate, rape, behead, burn, kill, destroy young, old, in the most inhumane way possible, worse than what happened in the Holocaust. Have we forgotten that? Well, guess what? These are the consequences of war. Yes, you go to war, we're going to go to war to try to protect ourselves. You asked for it, you got it. Stop complaining. Give up your arms, give back the hostages if you don't want to fight anymore. And that's our goal, is to get you to put down your arms. As Golda Meir once said, if the enemies put down their arms, there'll be peace in the Middle East. If Israel puts down their arms, there'll be bloodshed. It's time for the world to talk in one voice. Stop the killing. Let's have peace. And let's eradicate evil from this world. Let's eradicate the axis of evil, the state-sponsored of Iran, who sponsors all these proxies, terrorists, and Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Hamas, etc. Now it's time for the world. It's a great opportunity, a window of opportunity to neutralize that whole area and to bring peace in the Middle East that will prevent these types of terror throughout the whole world. Let's pray and hope that happens speedily in our days. Amen. God bless you. God loves you.